You ever have someone tell you something that sounds so vulnerable, so honest, that your first instinct is to comfort them, but later when the truth comes out, you realize it was all just smoke to cover what they were really doing? That's exactly what happened to me. One night my wife sat across from me at the kitchen table, looked me straight in the eye with this heavy sigh and said, "I miss intimacy." It hit me like a punch. Not because I didn't know something was off, of course I did. The silence in bed, the way she turned away when I reached for her, the excuses about being tired, stressed, not in the mood, but to hear her say it out loud in that quiet, almost broken tone, made me feel like maybe there was still a chance to fix it. I reached for her hand, told her I understood, told her we could work on it together. I suggested date nights, more time just the two of us, maybe even seeing a counselor if she wanted. She nodded, wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, "I just don't want us to lose each other." That moment, it disarmed me. I felt closer to her in those 10 minutes than I had in months, and I carried that conversation around in my chest like a promise. But what I didn't know then was that while she was telling me she missed intimacy, she'd already found it. Just not with me, and the man she found it with, my barber. Yeah, my barber, the same guy who trimmed my beard every 2 weeks. The guy I tipped generously because I liked the way he faded my hair. The guy who asked about my family, my job, my weekend plans while I sat in his chair. The guy who gave me advice about which cologne women liked best. If betrayal is a knife, finding out it came from someone you trusted to hold a razor to your neck, that's another level. But let me back up. My wife and I had been married almost a decade. We weren't perfect, but we were stable. At least that's what I thought. She was social, outgoing, always laughing with friends. I was more grounded, steady, the one who made sure bills were paid and plans were set. We balanced each other, or I thought we did. The cracks started small. She started dressing up more when she said she was just going to see friends. New makeup, new perfume. She got her nails done more often. Bought lingerie that I never saw her wear for me. I asked once, teasing, "Who are you getting all dressed up for?" She laughed it off, smacked my arm and said, "Don't be silly, for me." But the intimacy at home kept shrinking. She pulled away in bed, brushed me off when I kissed her neck, claimed headaches, early mornings, stress, and then came that kitchen table confession. I miss intimacy. It tore me apart because I thought she was reaching out, thought she wanted to fix us. So I tried. I planned dinners. I surprised her with flowers. I booked a weekend away. For a little while it seemed to work. She smiled more, laughed at my jokes again, but the distance never really closed. Then came the night. Everything changed. I'd gotten a last-minute call from a buddy, asking if I wanted to grab a drink. I said sure, told my wife I'd be home late. She kissed me on the cheek, said, "Have fun, you deserve it." But my buddy cancelled last minute, so I drove home earlier than expected. When I pulled into the driveway, the lights were on. Music played faintly through the window. I thought maybe she had friends over. I walked in quietly, ready to tease her about throwing a party without me. And then I heard it. Laughter. Not hers. A man's. I froze in the hallway. My heart hammered. I crept closer, each step heavy, dread curling in my gut. I peeked into the living room. There she was. My wife, in her leggings and tank top, hair pulled back, flushed with laughter. And across from her, on the living room rug, barefoot, grinning, spinning the plastic wheel of a twister mat, was my barber. They weren't even subtle. She had her hand on red, her foot on blue, twisted across him so their faces were inches apart. He laughed, adjusted his position, brushed against her. She squealed, playfully slapped his arm, giggled like a teenager. It was intimate, too intimate. Not sex, not yet, but the kind of intimacy she told me she missed. The kind she was apparently finding on a goddamn twister mat. I felt like the floor had given out under me. I must have made a sound because she looked up, eyes wide. She froze. He froze. The wheel slipped from his hand and clattered against the floor. "Hey," I said, my voice flat, colder than I'd ever heard myself sound. "Having fun?" She scrambled up, face pale, stammering, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the cliché was so absurd. "Really? Because it looks like my wife is playing Twister with the guy who cuts my hair." He stood, hands up. "Man, it's just a game, relax." A game. That's what he called it. I stared at him, then at her, then back at him. My hands shook, not from fear, but from rage boiling under the surface. I wanted to hit him, to wipe that smug grin off his face. But I didn't. I just stood there seething, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I said, "Out. Now." He grabbed his shoes, muttered something under his breath, and left. My wife stood there, shaking, tears in her eyes, trying to reach for me. "It's not like that," she pleaded. "We were just what?" I snapped. "Just laughing, just twisting yourselves together on the floor. You said you missed intimacy. Now I know where you found it." She cried harder, insisting it was harmless, that they hadn't crossed a line, that it was all innocent. But I'd seen enough. Innocent doesn't look like that. Innocent doesn't leave you flushed and breathless on a mat with another man. Innocent doesn't make you hide it until you're caught. I walked past her, grabbed my keys and left. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. That night, I sat in my car in an empty parking lot, staring at the steering wheel, shaking with rage and heartbreak. And in that stillness, one thought burned through everything else. She laughed at my trust. She confessed she missed intimacy, and instead of turning to me, she found it in the arms of my barber. And that was when I realized this wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. This was about exposing the truth, because she wanted intimacy, and I was going to give her the most intimate thing of all, the raw, undeniable reality of what she'd done. I didn't sleep that night. I drove around aimlessly, the city lights blurring past my windshield, my chest tight, my head pounding with replay after replay of what I'd seen. Every time I closed my eyes, there they were again. Her laugh, his grin, their bodies tangled on that stupid mat, their hands and feet pressed against colored circles like it was some teenage sleepover game. Except it wasn't innocent. It was loaded. It was exactly the kind of intimacy she'd told me she missed, and she'd chosen to share it with anyone but me. By the time I finally pulled into the driveway, the sun was already rising. I sat there in the car, staring at our house, and felt like I was looking at a stranger's home. How many times had she smiled at me in that doorway, after coming back from errands? How many times had he been inside when I wasn't there? When I walked in, the house was quiet. She was curled up on the couch, puffy-eyed, still in her leggings as if she hadn't moved all night. She looked up at me desperate, whispering, "Can we please talk?" I didn't sit down. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, my voice flat. "Talk. Go ahead." She started with tears, saying it was stupid, meaningless, a mistake. She swore nothing physical had happened beyond what I saw, that she was just lonely, that she wanted to feel young again. "Lonely," I repeated, my jaw tight. "You live with me. You could have come to me. You did come to me. You sat at our kitchen table and said you missed intimacy, and I believed you. I tried. I gave you everything I could. But instead of turning toward me, you found it with my barber, the guy I pay to hold a razor to my throat." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I swear," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I laughed bitterly. "This far? You think Twister on the floor is where it stops? You think sneaking around with him, laughing in my house behind my back is innocent? You crossed the line the second you let him in that door." She begged me not to end it, said she'd cut him off, said we could rebuild. But the more she spoke, the more I realized something. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. So I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I just looked at her and said, "You wanted intimacy. Now you get honesty. And the truth is, this marriage is done." I left again, this time to make things official. The next few days were a blur of planning. I called a lawyer. I gathered evidence, not just what I'd seen, but the little things I'd ignored, texts I'd found, receipts tucked in her purse, charges on the bank account that didn't make sense. Piece by piece I built a file, not because I wanted to drag her through the mud, but because I wasn't going to let her laugh me off again. This time I'd have proof. But the barber, that part burned almost as much as her betrayal. I had to sit in his chair, let him cut my hair, while he smiled and asked me about my weekend, knowing he was sneaking around with my wife. The thought made me sick. I decided I wasn't going to let him skate away clean, so 2 weeks later, when I knew she was meeting him again because some habits die hard, I set the stage. She thought she was sneaking off for another errand. I followed quietly, parked down the block and waited. Sure enough, he showed up at his shop after hours. She slipped inside. I gave it 10 minutes, then walked in. The bell above the door jingled. He looked up, startled, scissors in hand. She spun around, eyes wide. "Evening," I said calmly. The color drained from both their faces. He started stammering. "Look, man," I cut him off. "Save it. You don't get to talk your way out of this. You had the audacity to stand behind me with a razor in your hand while you were sneaking behind my back with my wife. That's not just betrayal, that's cowardice." She rushed forward, tears streaming, grabbing my arm. "Please stop, we can fix this." I pulled away. "Fix this? You played Twister with him on my living room floor. You lied to my face. You mocked my trust. There's no fixing this." I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Divorce papers. Signed, stamped, ready. I slammed them on his counter. "You said you missed intimacy," I said, looking at her. "Well, here's intimacy, the raw truth. You're free now. Free to play all the games you want with him. But you'll do it without me." The silence was heavy. He couldn't meet my eyes. She sobbed, whispering my name, begging me to reconsider. But I didn't waver. I turned and walked out, the bell jingling behind me like the sound of finality. The fallout was immediate. Word spread fast. Our friends found out. My family found out. Her family found out. She tried to spin it, claiming it was just a mistake, that it never went too far. But once the truth is out, you can't stuff it back into the dark. People saw it for what it was. The barber's business suffered. People don't trust a man who betrays his client like that. His chair sat empty more often. I found a new barber across town, one I could actually look in the eye. As for her, she spiraled. She texted me constantly, long messages at midnight, pleading, apologizing, swearing she'd do anything to get me back. I didn't answer. Eventually the messages turned bitter. blaming me, accusing me of overreacting, saying I'd ruined everything. But deep down she knew the truth. She'd ruined it the moment she let him into our home. The divorce went through smoothly. I walked away with my dignity intact, my proof solid, my head held high. And me, I rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but with clarity. Because I realized something in all of this. Intimacy isn't just about bodies tangled on a mat, or touches, or laughter. Intimacy is honesty. It's vulnerability. It's trust. And once that's gone, no amount of games can bring it back. She said she missed intimacy, but what she really missed was respect. And when she looked for it in another man, my Barber of all people, she lost the one thing she never expected: me. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes when I laid those divorce papers on the counter between her and him. The way her mouth opened, then closed, her whole world collapsing in silence. That was the moment she realized the game was over. And for the first time in months, I felt free.